I broke my ankle. To be more specific, my talus bone. And the surgeon said multiple times I would have been better off choosing a different injury. So if I can choose that. Anyway, the talus bone is not a big bone. It's the bone that is kind of a round bone. If this was my foot, sits kind of here. And it connects the leg with the hand, with the foot in this case. So you can do all kinds of motions, you know? And yeah, so it's really unfortunate injury. Anyway, how did it happen? I went bouldering. Bouldering is some type of climbing, but it's usually in a sports hall and you don't have ropes, which I, in hindsight, think like, why are there no ropes with this sports, you know? No security whatsoever. But you have little stones on the wall and then you climb yourself up. You're supposed to like have your hands straight and then push yourself up with your feet. But you have to place your feet into these like tiny holes and on the little stones, and you are wearing special shoes for that and you have to land out. So my body was not used to this kind of sports, and at some point my muscles experienced fatigue. But you know, I went there with my friends and my friends were better than me. They were more successful in climbing the wall. So I was like, if they can do it, I got competitive. I should be able to do it too. And then I was like, one last wall, you know? So I climbed up and I made it. I made it to the top. I was so proud of myself. But then I climbed down and my muscles were like, nope, we are too much fatigued now. We cannot hold you anymore. Yeah, and then I slipped and I fell. Like, it wasn't even that high, just 1.5 meters maybe 1 meter. And the floor was fluffy, like you could bounce. I actually hopped around before and I was thinking, I want to go to a trampoline place now. Yeah, not gonna happen anytime soon. Because when I fell, it happened so fast. Like 1 second I was totally fine, the next one I wasn't. I saw my foot, if this was my foot, twisted like this. I saw a pointy bone peeking outside of my skin. There wasn't a lot of blood, but still I was like, what just happened? That's my foot? What the fuck? And then I started panicking, of course. But I think the adrenaline did a very good job because the pain level was not that high. Like, one of my friends asked me about my pain level, and that was a pretty good question because it got me thinking and out of my panic. It was just about 5 or 6, which is crazy for this type of injury. I tried to wiggle my toes and I was able to. I think somebody must have taken off my shoe because how would I be able to see my toes? But yeah, it's not just that my talus bone got fractured, it also got dislocated, which I later read in the hospital discharge papers that I had to translate because I'm in Portugal and I'm not Portuguese, obviously. Yeah, and then it makes sense that my foot was kind of twisted. But I could wiggle my toes and I could still feel the foot. So in my head I was like, probably there is no nerve damaged. The doctors can fix bones, right? And I also didn't bleed that much, I think. Like, one of my friends put her hand over my eyes when I tried to look at my injury. It was really not a good sight. But I tried to calm down, and I already saw the lady who operated the facility. She was on the phone and calling the ambulance. So I was like, probably help is gonna come, and first aid will probably be able to help me. And once they arrived, they put me on a cot and shoved me into the ambulance, and before that I think measured my blood pressure and saw if I was able to speak and stuff. By the time they arrived, I already calmed down a little, because when the ambulance arrives, you know you're gonna get help. The last thing I remember is that I saw a woman's face over my head, and she told me that they are going to give me something. In this moment, I knew, like, no, I'm gonna get drugged. And they put me on ketamine. Yeah, I never had this drug before, and I don't know why people take it to have fun. Like, that was a trip. I saw so many lights. It was awful because I could not differentiate dream from reality anymore. And also, 1 week before, I finished binge watching Squid Game with my flatmate. And I think during my trip, I saw people in pink overalls with all the lights. So, what the fuck? Yeah. And then at some point, I woke up and I don't know if it was a bed or it was still a cot, but I woke up in a semi-dark room. Like, I could see the lit up corridor, and then there was this dark room, and there were people around me, like other beds. I guess that was the emergency room, because later also my friends told me that literally some people in the bed next to me seemed like they were gonna die. But fortunately, I was too drunk to even witness that. Anyway, when I came back to my senses, it was all still like, ooh, what just happened? Oh my god, I'm back to reality. Thank goodness. And then I realized, oh no, I'm actually in a hospital. Oh no, I really had that accident. I think once the nurses realized that I was waking up, because I think I was calling my friends' names. I mean, I was terrified to be alone and I just wanted to see a familiar face. The nurses came and helped me to undress. I had to take off everything, even my earrings, and my panties. So they gave me like this dress that is open in the back. And then I knew, like, okay, the surgery is still in the future, but hopefully it's going to happen soon, because with this type of injury, I need surgery immediately, because it was an open fracture. I never had a serious injury like that, where parts of my body were not where they are supposed to be. So, to be honest, the worry about what's going to happen to me, if I will be able to have a normal life, if I will be able to run, to swim, to dance, to jump, to climb upstairs, to have a normal life, that was more frightening than the pain. I think at that point I didn't feel any pain anymore. I mean, I was already in the hospital, so they gave me a lot of stuff, painkillers, I guess, and also the adrenaline, just from my body itself and the situation. So I got to see my friends again, which was soothing to know that they actually went to the hospital to see me and be with me. But I only got to see them briefly. And then they shoved me into the surgery room and explained to me that they are going to perform a surgery on me, but I had to sign a paper to give my consent. And I was like, yeah, give me the paper, I will sign, because not having surgery was not an option for me. I mean, it would have meant to yeah, I don't know, lose my leg or get an infection and wither away myself. So yeah, I was like, please help me, I'll sign. And while they were preparing already the anesthesia, I remember there was this one guy sitting at the computer and he asked me what was my favorite music. So he put on that music. Actually, I could hear it in the background, and then he asked me about it, and I told him that I went to a concert of my favorite band. It was in 2017 in Cologne, Germany. Yeah, and that I was in the front row. I probably passed out after this. Probably then the anesthesia kicked in. And I remember I woke up at some point, it was already dark in the night, and I had pain. But also my foot was numbed. It's a weird feeling when you have pain, but still your limbs are numbed, so you're not supposed to have pain, but you can still kind of feel it, you know. I also had an IV in my left arm, and that hurt like crazy, but it was necessary. And then I wanted to have a look at my foot, and the first thing I noticed was, thank goodness it's in an anatomically correct position, not twisted anymore. And the second thing I noticed, I have screws, rods in my foot. Like, what the hell is that? Never seen anything like that. And what I found out later through research and of course also talking to the medical staff is this thing was called an external fixator, or how they say it here in Portugal, I kind of like that name, fixador. Sounds like, oh, we're gonna fix your foot. Which it does, actually. That thing is genius when you think about it. They basically drilled holes into my bones and attached rods or screws to lock my ankle. I could not move it, even if I tried to, which I didn't, because they told me not to, and I didn't want to damage it. But it really locked my ankle joint unmovable. If I would have been able to move my ankle, the danger would have been that this bone might have grow together again in the wrong position, which is not what you want to have for a joint. Also, thinking about it, I had an epiphany why in English it's called joint. Because you have several bones that join together. And this has to be seamlessly, because otherwise they're gonna grind against each other, and then I will have problems, pain and stiffness or whatever, for the rest of my life. So when I understood that, I was like, okay, these screws look scary, but so far they don't really hurt. And they have a really important purpose. So if they can prevent me having these issues later on, then so be it. Sleeping was really difficult, especially the first few nights, because I could only lay on my back. One of the screws was through my heel, like this, from here to here. So I could not lay on the side because the screw was in the way. But they gave me a big pillow like this, and I put my foot on it. After a few nights, I was actually able to kind of lay on the side. So the next morning, I don't know if it was before or after breakfast, but they put me on a chair and shoved me into the shower room. So yeah, you undress completely in front of strangers. For them it's not a big deal, but when you have an accident like that and you are used to being independent, this is an awkward situation. Like, suddenly somebody else is cleaning my body. And also, this seems to be minor, but I mean, I had nothing with me, so also no products whatsoever. So the nurse, she used the same product to wash my body and my hair. So when I'm at home, I would usually use 3 different products for that, like body lotion, shampoo, and conditioner. But in this case, my hair was dry as fuck. Cognitively, I knew like this is not something I should be worried about now. Like, I have bigger problems, but it just accentuated my helplessness and my lack of autonomy in this situation. And then also, I had an IV in my left hand, and that slipped out during the shower, so my hand was completely covered in blood. That was an awful sight. I mean, it looks worse than it was. Just clean it up, patch it, and then done. But still, it just added up, and I tried to endure it. And then for going to the bathroom, fortunately, she just shoved me over the toilet. So I could go to the bathroom normally. That was not the case in the next hospital that they brought me to. Yeah. So after that, probably after breakfast, the staff told me that they are going to bring me to another hospital for an MRI. But I had nothing with me. I had an accident, so no phone, no bag, no nothing. And I started to worry because my friends didn't know that they are going to bring me into another hospital, and I didn't have my phone, so I could not contact them. However, I was lucky because in the moment that the bombeiros, the firefighters, arrived to bring me to another hospital, my flatmate appeared with my bag and my phone and everything. I was so glad. That was good timing, and girl, if you watch this video, thank you 1,000 times. So I had a little talk with the firefighter. Funny thing is, turns out he used to work for the same company as I do, so there was like an instant connection. And he said that usually he would not be allowed to have another person join the ambulance ride. But in this case, he made an exception, so my friend could come with me to the next hospital, and the next hospital was awful. Yeah, so because I was on all kinds of substances due to my condition, I did not really realize all the fuss what's going on in the first hospital, but that was probably good because it was the emergency room. But in the second hospital, I was full aware what's going on. So they put me into a room that, like, there were computers on the wall, so it wasn't even just a room for patients, but it was not the reception either. It was, I don't know, weird. I was just stationed there, and there were a lot of people always on the computers, stuff coming in and out. And yeah, so it was really not a calm place, and there was a very artificial light over my head. So it did not feel great to be there. And at some point, my foot started bleeding, and it also hurt, and I kind of panicked. like, my foot is bleeding. Nobody reacted. They ignored me. And it's getting dark. I'm putting on some lights. Wait a minute. So we have some lights. Like, they ignored me for 10 to 15 minutes. And then finally some guys came to undress my dressings. Like, my foot was wrapped out like a burrito. And they undressed it to see what's going on. And I was relieved to see that actually there wasn't so much bleeding anymore. And as far as I know, that it's not so uncommon for surgery wounds to have like an after bleeding. And as long as it's not excessive, shouldn't be too much of a worry. So they cleaned it up and redressed it again. But the whole time, these guys were holding to the rods in my leg, especially because they used medical utensils to clean up the dressings. So with the metallic things, they clung to these rods, and that feeling was so weird. I felt it in my bones, like really. It took them forever to do it. And then also, at some point, I had to go to the bathroom. And as I said before, going to the bathroom in that hospital in a normal way was not an option. They wouldn't put me on a chair and then shove me over the toilet. No, they gave me a bedpan. I have a shy bladder, so that's not exactly something easy for me to do. The woman gave me a bedpan and then closed the curtains. However, the curtains were just curtains, so I could still hear everyone, and there were huge spaces in between the curtains and the walls and the next bed and whatsoever, so I could also see people coming in and out. So that was difficult for me to, let loose in that situation. I tried to, but it just, I don't know, it was all too much. All this situation was just way too much. For them, it's just everyday life, but for me, as somebody who just had an accident, that is not something I'm used to. So when the nurse came in again and asked me, like, did you do it? It's like, sorry, I can't. She said, like, you better try again, because otherwise I would have to give you a catheter. I was like, okay. So I tried again. It didn't work. I couldn't. So then she was like, okay, now we have to give you a catheter. So she put a very little tube down there into my venous, into my bladder. And there was a poke, and then everything came out. So yeah, that was a solution, not exactly what I would have preferred to, but well, it worked. That was kind of traumatic because, again, I lost my autonomy over my own body. It's really not something you want to experience ever. But I did not expect to experience something like that at my age. And then at some point, finally, they were ready to put me into the MRI. I guess that device is quite busy because not every hospital has one. And I had to wait basically the entire day to get there, from the morning until 9:10 at night. And then they transferred me to another hospital, an orthopedic hospital, where, spoiler alert, I ended up staying for 4 weeks. 4 weeks. That was the longest I ever stayed in a hospital. And then other firefighters came to bring me to the orthopedic hospital. And in that moment, I realized this is probably the last time for a long time that I'm going to see the outer world.
Es ist noch hell draußen, so einigermaßen. Oh, ich will die Sonne sehen.
I had mixed feelings about it. On the other hand, I thought like, okay, I'm gonna get proper help now, but the future is uncertain, more than ever. When I arrived at the orthopedic hospital, the staff was much nicer. Not only did most of the people actually speak English, but also the way they communicated with me was more welcoming. I remember one nurse asked me what was my birth date, and then I told her, and she was, "Oh, that is a very nice birth year, because it's also my birth year." And I instantly kind of felt relieved because of that friendly welcome. And then the next day, a surgeon came to me and told me that my fracture is very rare and it was a very complex surgery, and that I obviously will need another surgery because I had these rods or screws in my leg. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I had my second surgery, and the doctors told me, we are going to take the rods out of your foot. So I was excited. I was like, yes, please take them out. When I woke up after the surgery and I looked at my foot, the rods were still in there. I was so disappointed and confused, like, why are they still in there? I don't understand this. But because it was already in the evening, the doctors were gone, so I couldn't ask them, and I had to wait until the next day, till the afternoon, until one of the surgeons came to me and explained to me why I still had the rods in my foot. And I still had them because my bone still needed some time to be locked, but they had removed one of the rods at least, and they had opened up my foot on the side to put internal hardware, 3 titanium screws to be precise, into the bone. That also gets to show how severe my injury actually was, because this bone needed or needs these screws to actually stay put together. When the surgeon told me that they had inserted 3 titanium screws into my bone, that was a weird feeling, because I then thought, now I have something in my body that actually doesn't belong there. But yeah, when it helps, when I need them, first it was kind of shocking, but thinking about it now, I made peace with the fact that now I am part cyborg. And the first thing I asked the surgeon was, when I got to the airport, would they ring? And he said, I don't know, probably not, because they are titanium, but would be cool. So yeah, I'm gonna give you an update if I ever go on a plane again, and see if my foot is gonna ring in security checkup. Before they put me on anesthesia, the anesthetist actually came to me and asked me, like, what type of anesthesia did they give you in your first surgery? And I was like, there are different types of anesthesia? How am I supposed to know? But then she explained to me that they would give me a full body anesthesia. I mean, put me to sleep. Yes, please. I don't want to feel that. But also she said, I'm gonna put something into your back, and then when you wake up, you won't be able to feel your feet. Attention, plural. I was like, both of my feet? Yes, but it's against the pain, so you won't feel pain. And immediately I was like, no, no, no. don't put anything in my back. I don't want to have anything in my spine, and I don't want my non-injured leg to be numbed. No. If I wake up and my injured foot is paralyzed for a while, that's fine, but not the other foot. And I am so glad that I advocated for myself in that moment, because after the second surgery on that weekend, I also got my period. And they wouldn't let me go to the bathroom after surgery right away. So again, I had to pee in a bedpan. That was not a fun experience, but at least by the time I had a single room, so it was more calm and I was actually able to do it. So I didn't need a catheter, but I got my period. So it was red. And if my non-injured foot would have been numbed by that time, I wouldn't even have been able to push myself up properly. And then after 2 more weeks, I had my third and final surgery where they finally took out the rods. The third surgery was not that big of a deal anymore because they only had to take out the rods. But while they were connecting me to the anesthesia, they were already undressing the wrappings around my foot. And I was just hoping that the anesthesia would kick in early enough for me not to feel them taking out the rods. And yeah, so again, after that surgery, I had pain, so I asked for painkillers. And they also gave me painkillers into the veins here in the hands. That's, I think, is actually more effective than taking pills. However, in both cases, I felt like I only needed painkillers for like about 2 days after each surgery. But they kept offering me painkillers and then also another medicine to deal with the side effects of the painkillers, because apparently when you take a lot of painkillers, it can be very aggressive to your stomach. So your stomach produces more acid, which can then also cause complications. But at some point I was like, do I really have to take them? Like, I prefer not to completely numb myself, because yes, I do have some pain, but if I feel nothing, I don't know what's going on down there in my foot, and I want to feel the signals that my body sends me so I can act appropriately, you know? If I numb everything, I don't think that's good. We should be able to deal with a certain level of pain. If it gets too excessive, I understand taking painkillers, but yeah, I didn't want to completely knock myself out. And something else that I have to take or had to take every day was blood thinners. So I had to take these motherfuckers. This is a syringe, how they call it here, this thing. So I have to poke myself with this every day. Those are blood thinners, and I have to poke myself in the belly, and they are painful and they leave bruises. So it's not something fun to do, but the doctor said it's necessary because when I cannot move that much, it can happen that my blood clogs, and that can be potentially very dangerous. So yeah, I guess taking these pokes every day is the lesser of a concern. And here's the summary of the timeline. On the same day that my accident happened, I got the emergency surgery to close my wound and put my bones back into place. And then it took 2 more weeks for the second surgery, where they removed one of the pins and inserted the internal screws, the titanium screws. And then after another 2 weeks, they removed the external fixator completely. After the second surgery, the hospital offered me to go home already, but with the external fixator on my leg, I did not feel ready to take care of myself at home. So I was very, very glad that I had the option to stay 2 more weeks in the hospital, even though staying 4 weeks in the hospital was mentally tough, not gonna lie. But nurses and everyone in the hospital was so sweet, so they did their very best to take care of me. And yeah, I'm very grateful that I had this good medical care. So after 4 weeks in the hospital, I was released. I could still not bear weight on my foot. So in total, 4 weeks after I left the hospital, I could still not bear weight on my injured foot. So in total, 8 weeks, I could not walk. 2 months. And then I had an appointment with my surgeon. So we took an x-ray and he had a look at my feet. And then he said, okay, everything looks like it's in its place. You can be awake now. And he seemed also very surprised that by then I was already able to have some motion in my foot, probably more than he expected, because during the time that I was at home, I was very diligent to do some exercises on my own with resistant bands and this little ball here. Yeah, so I did my best to be able to put my foot flat on the ground, and then I was able to walk.
Slowly, but I'm walking.
What's that?
I'm walking.
I had to wait another week after that until physiotherapy finally started. And now I'm 2 weeks in physiotherapy. This video is already quite long, so I will a separate video just about all the exercises that I did alone at home and then also in physiotherapy, and how much these exercises helped me in my healing process. Thank you for listening to my story, and if you were suffering from a similar injury, or maybe you broke even the same bone, please share it in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear about other people's recovery stories. And if you want to follow my recovery journey, consider subscribing so we can connect in the future. See you soon. Bye.